Vertical farming comes with a long list of benefits like land saving, weatherproofing and high yield crops. But a recent report published in Nature Food challenged those land saving claims, suggesting that regional conditions are key to determining the most sustainable footprint of each farming method. TILL Weidner is one of the authors of the report. He's a postdoctoral researcher with ETH Zurich. TILL, what prompted the report?
It's part of my doctoral studies, and initially I looked into how we can use organic waste in urban agriculture. And I was quite fascinated by urban agriculture as a promising solution to some of our problems. And pretty quickly we realized that there is potential issues around energy use in vertical farming in particular, and it's not that much talked about. And when it was talked about, it wasn't put into context with the carbon footprint behind that energy. So we were just quite curious what's going on, and also then realizing if we need to use renewables, which is really the only way to be sustainable within vertical farming, that comes with a land use. So the land saving claims that are often talked about, we wanted to put them on a test, essentially.
So what were the main findings that you came to on the basis of your research?
Yeah, so we did it in two parts. So first of all, we built a model to assess the energy consumption of greenhouses and vertical farms, depending on the outside conditions. And one surprising aspect was there that greenhouses can be really, really low energy if they're optimized well from a climate control perspective, whereas vertical farms more or less have a certain amount of minimum energy that they need for the lighting, since they can't use the solar radiation coming from outside. Then in the second part, what was really interesting to us when we designed the renewable system and calculated the land use was that open field farming actually wasn't so bad compared to controlled environment agriculture. And oftentimes actually it had a lower land use when we looked at the net land use compared with vertical farming. Greenhouses were always a bit lower. But then we use these findings to put them into context with the region. We call that relative land use efficiency. And we found that, so we take into account basically how much farmland there is in the region and how much land there is to generate energy, where you can install wind turbines and solar panels. And then we found that the picture often changed a lot. So places with a high combined footprint, for example, for indoor farming, were still quite favorable for this technology because there was so little farmland, with so much land to generate energy, for example, in United Arab Emirates. But there was also the other instance where the net land use of vertical farming or CA in general looked quite favorable. But then because there was a lot of farmland available and not so much land to generate energy, or maybe the energy that can be generated there was not so efficient because of very low sunlight or very low wind speeds, it was the other way around. So it's very important to look at both the net land use, but also the relative land use that is very region specific.
So with our push on a global level to become more sustainable, in any industry, how do you see these results actually being used on a practical level?
Yeah, so this work was definitely aimed at practitioners. I didn't want to just have a study out there. I really want to influence the industry if I find something useful for them. And so we've done quite some dissemination activities, and it's received some response. And I think in general, vertical farming so far is driven by cost and prices. So can they be profitable? And that depends to some extent on the cost of energy, but it also depends on the market setup. Whereas looking at sustainability, we actually found that there's very few life cycle assessments that have been done correctly as they should be done, and that they show the results that they show. So there's very little knowledge, I would say, about the actual impact of this energy combined with the electricity that is being used. So what we just want to highlight is two things. So first of all, you really need to use renewable energy. There's no other way that vertical farming can be deemed close to sustainable if you use fossil fuel powered electricity, for example. And the second one, if you use renewable energy, and say you're like a country, you want to decide, should I build greenhouses, should I build gardens, should I invest in vertical farming? It's important to consider how much suitable farmland you have available and how much land you have for energy, and then kind of take the decision from there. And as I said earlier, it makes sense if you have little farmland and lots of energy land. But then the other consideration I think I really want to convey is there's only at the moment so many solar panels that we can produce, and the uptake of these technologies is quite slow. It needs skilled labor, and therefore it might be more pressing at the moment to decarbonize the electricity grid for other uses, such as in hospitals or schools, rather than build all this infrastructure and then just make food that could have been made anyway. So if you really want to take the Paris Agreement and the pledges seriously, it might be at the moment sensible to focus all the renewable efforts on decarbonizing other industries and then see what should be done on the food front. But for now, I think it's sensible to take this holistic approach.
Absolutely. Till, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your research and your expertise with us here on the APAC Network.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Ori. It's been a pleasure.
Till Weidner with us there.